Star Trek, the next generation. Your love throughout the nation. You're my favourite show. Was in every episode, you're lucky. You don't have to wait for buses. You just step into the transporter and off you boldly go. Mr. Wall's my favourite person.
We are the Org. Our mission is to assimilate Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and beer. Lots of beer.
Hello, friends.
Hello.
It's Peter and Anne-Marie with bOrgCast 1.4. Going back in time.
Gotta get back in time.
Oh, tune.
Tune, definitely tune. That'll get some use, actually, over the next year or so. The idea is that we're filling in the first season that we didn't do, just out of completeness' sake, but curiosity's sake as well.
Because you're a completist.
I am a completist, yes. It didn't seem right, ultimately, to miss out the first season, but it would have been a slog to do it all at once, definitely, and you would have been griping all the way, so probably this is the best way to do it. And, as we'll find out, this will tie nicely to our next season 7
Yes,
episode.
no, it does, it does.
Right.
Last time on Deep Space Nine.
We heard from Ravine on our coverage of Profit and Loss in bOrgCast 719.
Mm-hmm.
Quick thought listening to this episode of the bOrgCast. Even if Deep Space Nine has the best security possible keeping civilians out of ops, there are two people on the station who are going to bypass it and stroll in like they own the place. Quark and Garak. Maybe they've given them unlimited access because they can't be bothered working out how they circumvented the security this time. Oh, fair point, I think.
No, it is, yeah. If anybody's going to get through, it's going to be them.
Yeah. And of course, then in our last podcast, we then had Golda Cat breaking into Sisko's quarters. So there does seem to be massive flaws in the security here.
Yeah, but Cardassians
Yeah.
knowing a Cardassian station and systems better than Federation, not hard to believe.
Mm-hmm. Wayne Peters has been catching up on old ballcasts.
Yes.
And if you want to see what he's been thinking of them, he's been tweeting quite regularly. So, what's his Twitter handle? There's a question.
Wayne _ Peters.
He's Wayne _ Peters on Twitters, if you want to see what he's been thinking of things so far. We caught up with Chaos on the Bridge last night.
That's awesome. Now, somebody was telling me about this programme. I think it might have been Andy Palastides.
Which is a documentary about the first few seasons of Next Generation, particularly the first two, and some of the reasons behind why they're so shonky.
Yes.
It's a documentary done by William Shatner, which is a curious thing in and of itself, written, directed by, apparently. So.
But he's good in this, though.
He is excellent, and it's wonderful, because at one point Ira Stephen Bear kind of turns the interviewing tables and actually says to him, well, how did you feel when, there's this new series and you weren't the star of it? And he's like, well, actually, I was a bit put out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's like, I had a bit of a twitch. You just know that's a massive understatement.
Yeah. So it's really well worth watching, and ties in nicely with our podcast this evening, because we're looking at some first season Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yes.
And we begin with the battle.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
So what's the cause of my headache?
I haven't the slightest idea.
An old enemy is playing tricks with the captain's mind. In a deadly game of revenge.
You murdered my only son.
Now he's forced to relive a terrifying battle.
Look for a silver sphere. Destroy it!
On Star Trek The Next Generation.
Bloody spoilery trailer.
Just slightly, pretty much the conclusion of the plot there shown in the trailer. Well done, lads. Started early, didn't it? Oh, dear.
So, you start off with a captain's log full of initial drivel, accompanied by pictures of the fish tank, which is just really quite odd.
It's our first view of his quarters, so he's got fish in his quarters as well as the ready room, apparently.
Okay, that's why it was different fish.
Yes.
I had thought that maybe they switched the fish as they changed seasons, but
these are different fish. So clearly Picard is a big fan of fish, even if Patrick Stewart isn't a fan of keeping them in bowls, but there we are. He didn't like that at all, bless him.
No. Well, the bloody lionfish kept dying, didn't it?
Yeah, unsurprisingly.
Because it didn't have enough room.
Yeah.
So anyway, you get the sort of drivel accompanied by fish, and you're thinking, what? But then you get on to, towards the end of that, the significant point, which is that they've come to a pre-arranged rendezvous with the Ferengi, but the only response they've had for 3 days is stand by. Mm-hmm. And then Picard is talking to Beverly, saying he's fatigued with a headache. So she does some initial scans, but says she wants him to go to sickbay. And she's like, I can order you to, and I'm the only one who can. You kind of get the sense they're about to have a bit of a Barney when Riker appears and says that the Ferengi are prepared to talk. And their commander, which the equivalent rank is Daemon, is Bok. And Troy senses deception.
It's a real shame we never got a Daemon called Matt, isn't it? Sorry.
Bok's son's never named, let's say.
Yeah, he's Matt.
Daemon Matt.
He was Daemon Matt. We also get to see the very distinctively designed Ferengi ship, the Marauder.
Yeah.
Which I think is a lovely design. I mean, it was one of the first ones created for Next Generation. A rather bizarre extending bridge, but the actual model itself looks really cool.
Yeah, there's other... I don't know whether it's the way it's shot, but it looks good in this, but I've seen the same ship class in other shots and not been impressed with it.
All right, or maybe it's only good from certain angles. That's sometimes the case.
Could be. But in this one, I agree, it does look good and interesting and different enough that makes you think of it as Alien.
Mm-hmm. So on the bridge, who's at the... we haven't done it in a long while.
Why have we not done it in Season 7?
I don't know. I guess there's just not been interesting con officers to talk about in Season 7.
Or have we not even seen the con?
Yeah, generally not. Curious, isn't it?
No, I'm aware of the fact that we haven't done it.
No. Anyway, at the con in Season 1, of course, is Geordie.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the way through, so always makes me think of Galaxy Quest. Because in Galaxy Quest, effectively the con officer is that guy.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
And
he used to be... Well, he's kind of also Wesley at the same time.
Yes, because he's a kid as well, so he's a sort of mixture of Geordie and Wesley, isn't he?
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, after the teaser, you've got Picard in sickbay, and Crusher's saying that headaches are no longer common. So whereas we as the viewers might be thinking, why is he complaining this much about a headache? There is a reason, because they're not usual in the 24th century. But Crusher says that the cause of Picard's headache is unknown. On the bridge, Wesley turns up, saying, "You're going to get a intruder alert," and then looks smug.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning of Wes being very annoying in this story. Oh dear. And it doesn't help, this is the debut of the Rainbow Jumper. Now guys, you can buy this online.
Oh yeah, you can.
If you really want to, you can buy your very own Wesley Rainbow Jumper.
Well, you can buy a Wesley Rainbow onesie as well.
Can you?
Yes.
Oh, man.
And what's the other one you can buy? I think it's in the US you can buy a dressing gown. Yeah. Most of the time you think, oh, the US gets stuff we don't on this particular occasion.
Yeah, they're welcome to it.
Turns out that Wesley has been trying to boost the long-range sensors in engineering, and he's been successful, and that piques Data's interest. But Data's like, we'll have this conversation another time. And he's like, yeah, it's a Constellation-class ship. And Picard is like, look, if it's one of our own ships, that's fine, but the delay that you've caused coming up personally in order that you could get a nice view of things, if that had been a hostile ship, that could have cost us something. You should have let the bridge know directly. But he's not really horrible. He doesn't shout.
No.
But it makes it clear that actually Wesley's a dick, basically. But although they know it's a Constellation-class ship, it isn't answering any hails. And Picard's headache returns. Then you have...
It's Wesley causing it.
Yeah, probably. I might just be sight of the bloody Rainbow Jumper.
Yeah.
So the Ferengi have said, don't worry, we'll hand over the ship. We want to meet. No, that's it. It starts off by saying they want to meet, but they're happy to either meet on the Ferengi ship or on the Enterprise. And so they agree that the Ferengi are going to meet on the Enterprise because it just seems safer all round. With the Stargazer approaching, that's still the case, but then the Ferengi says, this is our gift to you.
Yeah, so they're beamed straight to the bridge, which strikes me as very odd. Yes. You've got Damon Bulk, who's played by Frank Corsentino, who also played Tog, the Ferengi Daemon who was in love with Waxana in Menage a Troy. Mm-hmm. He was also a Ferengian Voyager, but doesn't return when his character Bok does in our next Season 7 episode, Bloodlines, which is a bit bizarre, but there we go. And the actor died in 2007. And then you've got Kazago, who's his first officer, who's played by a chap called Doug Warrett, who also had small roles in Beverly Hills Cop and Look Who's Talking To. Oh, boy. Yeah. And the other guy, who I guess is the second officer, is Rata, He was played by Robert Towers, who was one of the actors who played Benjamin Button in The Curious Case. Was also in the amazing Masters of the Universe film.
Oh, that one?
Yes, playing one of Skeletor's bounty hunters. Masters of the Universe film, the one where they got a huge toy line to choose from, so they created a bunch of their own characters that look shit instead. Bizarre adaptation, but he was one of those weird new creatures.
Okay. So, the Ferengi are there, and they want to buy data. And then Riker makes the joke that he's second-hand merchandise, which isn't funny.
No.
This is presumably before Measure of a Man, isn't it?
Yes.
Which is why they don't turn around and say he isn't property.
Yeah.
Because that hasn't actually been established yet.
No.
Okay.
It was his very early days for Data, obviously.
They reiterate that the ships under Ferengi control do not fear. And then Damon Bock refers to what he calls the Battle of Maxia, but it's actually an encounter 9 years ago where Picard destroyed a ship. Very clearly in self-defence. But then Picard's headache is back, and Troy felt something too. Something from Picard's past, but it's not clear what. The Ferengi say that download the ship's logs into the Enterprise computer. Said ship is the Stargazer, Picard's old ship. Now it's time to get anal about spaceships. Woohoo!
Took a trip on a Gemini spacecraft.
Yeah, now this is a lovely model. It was originally going to be a Constitution class, like the refit Enterprise from the movies. But they decided instead to base it on a model that up until now had been appearing in Picard's Ready Room, which has got sort of 4 warp nacelles. It was a sort of scratch-built thing, and it was intended to be his original command.
Yeah.
So the reason why this gets called a Constellation class is because basically they originally in the script they were saying Constitution, and they've just changed it to something that they can easily lip-sync over.
Okay.
Yeah. They built a new model. This isn't the same model that appeared in Picard's Ready Room, which was very much a kit bash using, again, movie Enterprise bits all glued together, which you can kind of tell from the warp nacelles. Model ship is seen again in Elementary Dear Data. Peak Performance, which is the one where Riker gets to fly it effectively.
Oh, the one with Kohlrabi.
Yeah, that's it. And Redemption Part 2. And in some ways it's a shame we don't get to see it more often, but then again it is supposed to be obsolete by the Next Generation era, so you wouldn't expect to be seeing loads of them around.
No, it does look cool though.
It does. The 4 nacelles, the idea was it was a fast science vessel basically, so that's kind of the reasoning behind that. It has a different registry number to the one that was sitting on Picard's desk, because the one that was sitting on Picard's desk was NCC 7100, which is just 1701 rearranged.
Yes.
Whereas here it's 2893. And it's been given a slightly different colour scheme to the model that was in his Ready Room, because that Ready Room model was just to match the colouring of the rooms.
Damon Bock says that the Stargazer is a gift to signify friendship between Ferengi and the Federation. The other Ferengi complain.
Yes, that's not a very Ferengi thing, let's say.
No. And then you have Picard in sickbay talking about the headache where Troy was there on the bridge. And he says he was remembering the Stargazer. And then he says he can smell smoke. And immediately my brain went to the whole thing about if someone's smelling burnt toast, they're probably having a stroke.
No.
So I started thinking about maybe Picard's having a stroke. And it was interesting that Crusher didn't say that. Is that 24th century medicine meaning that strokes don't happen now?
I don't know. Curious, isn't it?
But that's immediately what I thought. Obviously, when he says they smell burnt toast, that's a symptom of a stroke. You get them sorted, unless there's actual toast burning, in which case you put out the fire. And, he says it was part of his memory or a nightmare. Or Troy says or a nightmare, because it's not clear, actually, whether these are actually memories or not. And then it's time to go over to the Stargazer. Picard wants to go, and he's like, with your permission. And Crusher's like, yeah, I'll come as well. Solves the problem. He gets to go over, but she's on hand.
Mm-hmm.
Then you cut to round the Ouchie table of Ouchie. And Picard is explaining that the Stargazer was travelling at Warp 2 in the Maxia system, and a ship suddenly appeared out of nowhere and fired twice. And he then explains what the Picard manoeuvre, not pulling down the jacket.
Yeah, but the actual
spaceship manoeuvre, which is where Now, this is where you're going to have to correct me if I've got it wrong, because you know my spatial awareness and all that is shit. It's using something as like a slingshot to then suddenly fire at high warp and appear to be in two places at once.
Yeah, he's basically going really fast, but over a very short distance, so it's confusing. It looks like it's in two places at once. Yeah. And the way he illustrates this, bizarrely, is by using...
a pen.
A pen. When have they ever had pens in Star Trek? Very curious.
Yeah, I don't know. But no, they haven't, have they?
No, they don't have paper for starters. So.
Well, yeah, but you think about like touchscreen that uses pens.
Yeah, no, not even a stylus.
In theory, it could be that. Except you never see them use it like that, do you?
Bizarre.
And then, while he's talking about the Picard manoeuvre, it's clear he's reliving the experience. He refers to a former officer who clearly isn't there. He's talking about...
Vigo. It always makes me think of Viggo Mortensen.
Oh.
Yes, they are. That's giving you happy thoughts.
Yeah, I like Aragorn. Yeah, he's suddenly reliving the experience. He says he's on fire and they have to abandon. And then he sort of he collects himself and he says, you know, they had to abandon ship and they were eventually found in various shuttlecraft. But Crusher wants to have another look at Picard because he's clearly not right. On the Stargazer, Yar and Data are investigating to see if it's safe and everything. And Data reads out the registry plaque.
Yep, this is a redress of the... Well, first, from the Battle Bridge from Encounter at Farpoint, was the last time we saw this. Although, to be honest, it's also, of course, a redress of the movie Enterprise Bridge as well, which makes sense for the era. Even has Kirk's captain's chair from Star Trek 4 as well, so that's rather cool. The only thing that's really weird about it is the fact that they've labelled in large, friendly letters all the bridge stations. You notice that?
No, I didn't.
It's like sort of helm. And it's labelled not so that the person sat at the helm would be able to see it, but so it's at the front of the console where we're looking at it from. So it's clearly for the viewer's benefit. It's really bizarre.
Have they done it with one of them dynamo plastic things?
They may as well have. No, there's a lot bigger lettering than that.
Oh, okay. Geordie activates the emergency power cells, surprised that they're still working. Worf appears, having gone through all the ship, confirms that it's all clear, so Yar signals the Enterprise and Picard and Crusher beam down.
It's all a bit bizarre because the scene opens with Data and Yar walking out of the turbo lift, and they sort of look around the bridge and stuff, and all this time the turbo lift doors are open. And then, like, you know, sort of 5 minutes later, Worf comes out, and he's like, so what, he's just been stood in the turbo lift all this time? But the suggestion from the dialogue is he's been looking at the rest of the ship, but the turbo lift's not gone anywhere. It's really odd.
Picard's looking around, and he brushes off debris, but it's not dust. It's really rather chunky and looks like bits of rock.
Yeah, you know, whenever the ship's hit and bizarrely masonry starts falling from the scenery, well, apparently this is the same masonry that Federation ships are made from. It's really odd.
Very peculiar. And then you have Picard in his old quarters looking through a box of things, and he's got an old-looking uniform in there. Mm-hmm. Is that supposed to be a previous era? Because it's sort of grey.
I didn't notice, I must admit. Oh, right.
If you look at a screenshot, he's got the box, and on top there's clearly a later...
Judging by his flashbacks, it was the current uniform that was being used 9 years ago, isn't it? So it wouldn't have been an older form of the uniform, I don't think. So perhaps it was just some civilian gear he got.
Okay, just it had the red on it for command, and it reminded me of what we later see Wesley in as part of the cadet type uniform.
Oh, right, no. I didn't notice that. So.
I mean, I'm not saying it was the same design, but the colours, the red and the grey, were the same. But it's folded up on the top of the box, so you can't quite tell. So he's looking through the box, and there's a glowy thing which activates, and it clearly hurts Picard. And then you flash to the Ferengi ship, and Bok is controlling the device.
Yeah, these spheres are kind of a running theme with the Ferengi. Quite a lot of their technology is based around these designs, which is quite cool. Yeah,
whereas later on, when you actually see the whole sphere rather than just a glowy thing in the box, it just reminded me of one of those jump balls.
Well, the things like they look like Saturn, don't they? They've got the ball in the middle and the ring around the edge, and the ring is what you stand on. Bounce on.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. So, Bok is controlling the device, and Picard stumbles around the room, and Crush finds him half collapsed. And so she sort of takes control of him and says, "You've got to leave now," but she'll beam all this stuff over to his quarters on the Enterprise. And then you find out that a tug... Do we ever see a Federation tug?
I don't think we do, no, sadly.
Well, anyway, a tug is going to rendezvous with the... Rendezvous?
Don't bother trying to learn French, dear.
I want to rendezvous. The tug will rendezvous with the Enterprise, and then it will tug the Stargazer back to the nearest starbase. And when asked what it was like being on the Stargazer, Picard says it was like going back to your old family home where you grew up, but it's all empty and there's no one there. And Troy says, that it must have been hard. And he's like, well, no, actually, the headache is more troubling. And he then turns around and hands over command to, to Riker. But at this point, our son then went, Jonathan Frakes looks different. So when we pointed out the fact he had no beard, we decided he's called Jonathan Fakes in season 1.
It's Picard being sensible, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been other episodes where he's been less sensible than this. So, yeah, realising there's something wrong with him and he's stopping him being properly in command, he hands over, which is good.
Yeah. Unfortunately, what he does is go to his quarters where the glowy thing is. Data goes to Riker, saying that Picard's own log from the Stargazer is incriminating him, giving a very different version of events. It gets played, and Picard's like, well, yeah, it is my voice, but it says, it says it's his confession. And Riker's like, it's a fake.
It's a fake!
It's going to take one full day for subspace communications to reach Starfleet, and then the same amount for Starfleet's reply to reach them.
Never. The rest of the series, it never takes this long to contact.
It doesn't.
Within 10 minutes of anything happening, they've generally got an admiral breathing down their necks normally, haven't they? So either they are a very long way from home in this episode, or
But what Picard says is, we've got until then to find the answer as to what's going on. And then his headache comes back. Riker, then on a secure channel in the captain's ready room, contacts the Ferengi first officer to try and sort of make a connection. And
he hails Starship Ferengi. Are you telling me they don't have names for their ships? Very odd.
Well, maybe they don't know the name of the ship.
It sounds really clumsy, doesn't it? Starship Ferengi. What?
Yeah. Well, it's a Ferengi Marauder.
Yeah, if it had said Ferengi Marauder, that would have been better.
Yeah, but then maybe the ship didn't get its class name until later.
Maybe that's quite possible. No.
It does sound awkward, though. They could have made up anything, couldn't they? Hailing the starship Ghibli Bob would be better.
Not really.
No.
That would have been weak even for season 1.
Yeah, okay. Well, what would you have called it then?
I don't know. We're giving it a sort of Ferengi-sounding name. They'd be like sort of pirate ship names, wouldn't they? The sort of Generous Bounty or...
Oh, they would.
Yeah.
The Golden Hall.
Yes. So the Golden Hind, yes.
The Golden Hall.
the Latinum Flyer or something like that,
Yeah.
They could have shown a bit more imagination, couldn't they?
Yeah. Actually, don't we find out one later is called the something or other treasure?
Possibly. I know when Quark, a bit later on, gets his own shuttlecraft for an episode, I seem to remember he names it then. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, so they do name their spacecraft.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's not worry about that too much now.
While Riker is contacting the first officer, and at this point in time getting nowhere, Picard calls for Crusher. Bock fiddles with the device, and the headache's getting worse. And Crusher's like, why didn't you tell me it was this bad? And Picard is literally like, it wasn't until just now.
Yeah. And then she sedates him without asking for his consent, which I think is a bit odd.
Yeah, what was she going to do
at the very least, she would have said, I'm just going to give you some sedative now or something, but no, she just does it and knocks him out.
Yeah. Before she knocks him out, she says that maybe it's all to do with the Stargazer, and Picard rightly points out that he started getting the headache before he knew his old ship existed, but maybe it's something to do with, maybe it's a factor in it getting worse. And then she turns round and says that Riker's told her about the altered log, and I'm thinking, protocol? Was Riker supposed to do that?
Possibly, because of course she's got a certain degree of power over the captain to depose him effectively, hasn't she?
Oh, right. So
maybe,
actually,
yes,
that's
of all the
enough.
other crew to find out about it, her and possibly Troy,
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, actually.
There's another scene where Patrick Stewart's acting is excellent. I mean, he really does hold the first season together with his acting. So,
as he says that the last 3 nights, he's had voices and visions. Is he going crazy? Was he in his right mind then? Is he in his right mind now? And that's the point where Crusher just turns around and gives him a sedative. And you see Picard sweating and having nightmares, and you see Bock increase. Well, it looks like he's increasing the dial on his.
Yeah, no, it's a nice prop actually, because you can quite clearly see what he's doing. He's turning it up to 11 stupid.
Yes.
And we get to see the ghost crew. Of the Stargazer.
I like the effect of that.
Yeah, no, it's very clever. They've composited them in, so they're not in the same scene with Patrick Stewart. They've filmed them separately. The only weird thing is a bit later on when they appear on the bridge, when he's beamed over, they're talking to him, but their lips aren't moving. It looks really odd.
It's supposed to be unreal, though, isn't it?
You can argue that, yeah. And obviously it's cheaper if they just get somebody to do voiceover rather than hiring actors.
It's all a bit do-do-do-do-do-do-do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's slightly Twilight Zone-y episode, yes.
Yeah. And Bot then says, "You will injure yourself as you once injured me." And it's very clear that Picard is reliving the incident from what we can see. And one of the things he keeps saying over and over again is fire, fire. And it isn't clear whether he means fire, there is a fire, or fire...
As in fire the phasers, yeah. But Boc's really effective in this, I think. I mean, it's little wonder they decided to bring the character back, because unusually for a Ferengi, he's very effective in Next Generation.
And then Data is reporting to Riker that he's found a discrepancy between the two, like, ordinary captain's logs on the Enterprise and the one on the Stargazer, which shows that the log is a forgery. And then sort of that's going to be sort of a relief. And then Picard appears back in the ready room with a grin on his face, saying he's feeling much better, and effectively tells everybody to fuck off.
Yeah, and you get to see the model of the Stargazer has been replaced by a Silver Constitution class ship, because that's what they were originally going to use in this episode. So it's unfortunate that it suddenly appears when actually it would have been far better if they'd gone ahead and used the original model, but never mind.
Yeah. But having told everyone to leave except Riker, he tells Riker to release the tractor beam, giving him some, didn't you listen to some lecture on conserving tractor power? So Riker said okay. In the meanwhile, you've got Troy and Crusher looking at diagrams of what's going on with Picard. And then Wesley appears. And he didn't knock, he just turned up.
Yeah.
So they're cross. And Crusher's like, this better be important. And he's like, it is. And Troy's like, is it about the captain? And he's like, yes. And he's like, fair enough.
I don't know much about brain scans, but I glanced at these when you were studying them. And I noticed that these patterns are the same as those picked up from the low-intensity transmissions from the Ferengi ship. I went back and checked, and they're exactly the same.
What kind of transmissions?
I don't know. Engineering has nothing like it on record.
Let's get to the captain.
No, they might be affecting the captain. To Riker.
You're welcome, ladies. Adults.
Silence the child or send him away.
Dear, oh dear. Yeah, Will Wheaton was very unhappy about being given those lines, because basically, as he points out, it just makes Wesley seem like an utter twerp and turns the audience against him. So.
Yeah, whereas the audience might have forgiven him from his earlier blunder if he hadn't had those lines and he just turned up, provided helpful information, and then shut the fuck up.
Yeah, but it's bordering on the Wesley saves the day thing that isn't quite such a reoccurring theme as you remember it being, but nevertheless is fairly true in this story, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's true in a few. It's just not as many as you think.
No.
But I think the fact it appears at all is so annoying. Anyway, Riker then locates Picard, who's in Transporter 3, and new information. No, he isn't. He's buggered off. He's on the Stargazer, where Bok meets him, raises the shields, and uses his device. Meanwhile, Geordi says there's a low-energy pulse matching the one that they've been looking at in the ship. So Worf goes to check the captain's belongings.
Two rather improbable things here. One is the fact that Picard's able to control the entire starship by computer control, which irritates me as much as it irritates me that in Star Trek 3 there's a handful of crew controlling the Enterprise. The other slightly odd thing is the fact that Troy can detect Picard's emotions from across the vacuum of space. I mean, she's been able to do it with Riker, admittedly, but the idea there was that they had a real long-standing connection and a past and stuff. But here she's able to, pick up Picard's feelings and confusion and whatnot. Doesn't seem to make much sense, but never mind. Her powers do get sort of pulled back a bit over the course of the series.
At the moment, the Stargazer is close by, being pulled along by the Enterprise's wake.
No, it isn't. That's just it. It's been let go and it's starting to turn around and...
Oh, okay. But it's still not far away. And his emotions are being amplified by Bok's device.
Maybe.
But yeah, it turns out that Bok's son, Damon Matt, was killed on the Ferengi ship when Picard attacked. Although, if what Picard says is true, then Damon Matt was a twat. So Bok is now going to use the device to make Picard relive what happened. Bok beams out. And I do like the Ferengi transporter effect. It's got a sort of swirly thing.
Really, I found it a bit cheesy, but there we are.
I like
first season effects.
It looks different.
Well, it does look different.
It should look different.
But it doesn't look great, to be honest. But there we are.
Well, I like it anyway. You have the Enterprise trying to hail the Stargazer, but Picard isn't responding because, he's not on the right planet. And then Geordie's like, well, he wouldn't be. He's reliving the Battle of Maxia. They've worked that much out. Then they bring the jump ball. Worf brings it, having found it. And they ascertain that Picard didn't know it was in there, so he doesn't realise he's being affected. There's another attempt by Riker to make some kind of connection with the... what is his name? It's not Kazoo. It's
Kazargo, not Kazoo. Kazoo. I quite like this scene with Riker and Kazargo and all the business about Kazargo arresting Bok.
Well, that's a bit later.
Yeah. That's quite cool, that.
But at this point, Riker's holding up the sphere, and Kazoo, as I'm calling him now, says it's illegal. It's a thought amplifier. If Picard's got one of them, then he's in real trouble. And Riker's like, we both know where this came from. And at the moment, the excuse is that Damon Bok is in the lab. So anyway, at that point, the transmission cuts off. And then you've got Picard reliving the event to the extent that he's going to fire on the Enterprise. Troy senses anger, and then Riker's like, Data, what's the defence against the Picard manoeuvre? And Data's like, there isn't one. And he's like, there is now, you're coming up with it. Then you have the first officer saying that Bok has been confined to quarters and relieved of his command.
It's a good scene. I like the connection they make here. It's like, they both realise they're in trouble in various ways. So.
And what he was doing was unprofitable, which is true.
That's going to be a crime in Ferengi culture, isn't it?
Yeah, and it makes sense. So it's not even that you've somehow got suddenly unrealistic noble Ferengi that don't fit later on, if you see what I mean. It makes sense within their own culture that there's no profit in this. You're an idiot, so you're not allowed to be in command anymore. Because the role of a commander in a Ferengi ship is to make profit, basically, and enable the crew to do the same. So I like that. Data then says that there is a way, because of basically starship developments over time, bearing in mind the Stargazer is an older ship, the Enterprise contracted the Stargazer, so that's going to be their defence. And then you have Riker on the screen in the Stargazer saying to Picard, destroy the sphere. So Picard uses a suppository phaser, fires on it and gets blown backwards. Yeah,
which is a very dramatic looking scene, completely spoilt by the teaser.
Yeah, looks awesome. And then you've got Riker going, Picard, are you okay? Picard, are you okay? Shouting and shouting, as if like Picard's being naughty, not responding. And I was watching it thinking, well, he might be unconscious. Shouting at the screen isn't overly helpful. Why don't you actually try and get him out of there?
Yeah. But up until this point, Riker's been pretty good, actually.
No, he has.
It's one of his better stories, actually.
Yeah, other than having his big beardless face on the screen. It just looks wrong, especially the chin.
Yeah.
It's a particular type of chin that looks wrong.
Chin,
looks wrong without facial hair. There should be some kind of law that says if you've got that sort of chin, you have to grow a beard. Generally speaking, it's, I think, a very good episode.
It is. For the first season Next Generation, this is actually really strong stuff. Partly because a lot of it hinges on Picard's, Patrick Stewart's performance. Yeah. But the premise is really clever. Bok is a reasonably good villain.
And he's well acted.
And the Ferengi generally fare much better in this than their first outing, which we'll have to cover at some point.
Yeah. And I like Kazoo.
Yes, and they're not played purely for comedy in this story.
No, they're not. I mean, in this, they are a serious threat.
Yep. Stargazer's well realised, both internally and with the model, looks excellent, and we get some proper model shots swinging round, which is quite cool.
The female crew members all get things to do.
Yeah, and the only person that's annoying is Wes, but we have to get used to that, I'm afraid. And even the music, which quite often is ropey in Season 1, as we'll be finding out in our next episode, is actually not too bad in this story. There's a nice sort of air of mystery and eeriness about it also.
Yeah, and I really like the superimposed effects that are sort of real and sort of not. I like that.
Excellent stuff. Shall we find out what other people think?
Yes.
So we've heard from The Mark. The Battle, or Beverly, is a cold-hearted monster. Right. The Battle could be considered the first real, complete episode of Next Generation in terms of solid story. It's a bit slow-moving, but there aren't any critical flaws like all the previous episodes. The Ferengi return in an episode where they're much more tolerable than last time, from my memory, The episode is actually an elaborate revenge scenario where Bok is using the pretext of his well-intended gift as a way to torment Picard with a mind control device hidden on the Stargazer. The story of the Stargazer proves to be the most interesting aspect of the show, with a psychological component that's sometimes effective. There's a respectable symmetry to the idea of Picard being set up to relive this battle by attacking the Enterprise with the Stargazer, inevitably resulting in his own death at their hands. Unfortunately, the plot is like a meditation on slow, steady characters. Crusher can't explain Picard's headaches, and it takes too long for the crew to connect the dots between Picard's mental anguish and Bok's plan. Characters practically stumble over the silver glowing mind control sphere, and yet don't find it. Ultimately, it takes Wesley, boy genius, to detect the signal and alert the adults to his discovery, which breaks the logjam. Starfleet's procedures are looking really suspect. What kind of military abandons their warships, including their armaments, torpedoes, and doesn't scuttle a ship? Or if an enemy found it? Or, heaven forbid, the ship was found by an early warp civilization? It's a very good point, actually. Yeah,
it is.
Now, I know it's said that Starfleet isn't military, and I grant you it's not a good one, but what annoyed me was that Beverly didn't say a thing about the Stargazer. Good TV shows can create a believable world where all the characters act like they would in their real world. Yet here was a ship that had a significant impact in her life, and Wesley's, but his presence in the episode was limited. The ship her husband served on and died while serving on. And that merits no interest to her at all. Not even a comment, not even a sideways glance. Beverly is a cold-hearted monster. Not a bad episode for early Next Generation, and it gives some essential background for Picard. Yeah, and a good point about, yes, Crusher should have reacted. I mean, I'm not going to blame Gates McFadden for that, because it's undoubtedly the problem is in the writing.
Yes,
but,
not in her performance, yeah.
Cool, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We've also heard from Doreen.
And she writes, this was a nice change from Season 7.
Yes.
But Patrick Stewart's acting range is tested massively in both these episodes. He's absolutely fine when called upon to be in charge, but confused, angry, or whatever it was seemed beyond him.
I disagree, but carry on.
First season Ferengi seem really
yes,
weird.
They are very different to Ferengi in Deep Space Nine. Not so much in this story, but in the previous story they featured in, which we'll be covering at some point, there are very strange creatures there, despite the fact that one of them was played by Armin Shimmerman as well.
And Doreen says, I did, however, like the thought changer device, the jeopardy, and Troy's role in acting. Beverly Crusher doesn't seem clear on doctor-patient privacy.
Yeah.
Announcing to the entire staff that she needs to take another look at Jean-Luc. A lot of the dialogue around Picard's headache was full of double entendre. They've mapped the brain and eliminated headaches. Really? Is there any neurodiversity left? Would it be good to eliminate learning differences? Wesley was a highly annoying teenager in both these episodes.
Indeed. Yes. Particularly this one, actually. Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're on to MP3 feedback. And let's hear from Purry.
Hello, Orgs. Purry here to talk about the battle. It's been a while since I've revisited Season 1, and it always strikes me as a bit strange. It is very much the rough cut of the Next Generation we know and love. So many things do seem out of place, you know, Worf with his different baldric and his red shirt and his different head, Geordi at the helm. Not really. I mean, think about this, there was no scenes in engineering at all in this episode. It's just kind of weird. And Riker showing off his, frankly, weird and unsettling chin. Good thing he grew a beard to hide it, that's what I say. Anyway, on to the episode, and yeah, this is quite good. I'm always never sure if I like this one better just because it's got the Stargazer in it. And I do love the Stargazer. For a kit bash, and it was a kit bash, you can quite blatantly see it's a movie Enterprise model kit, sort of beaten up and turned into something new, and I think that might be another reason I love it. I've just got a real soft spot for that design with the 4 nacelles and no secondary hull, and the kind of thicker hull as well. It's a really interesting sort of design, and it looks suitably different, but I mean, I do love the movie era ships, and I could probably go on at length about how much I love them and that sort of thing. But to save everyone else having to hear me talk about spaceships, we'll go on to the episode. So I quite like the way they kind of set up Picard being tired. It's been a weird sort of few days and he's not had much sleep and he's getting these headaches, and I quite like the way they kind of set that up right at the beginning to sort of go through for him slowly becoming mind controlled by the Ferengi's weird orb thing, and of course the Ferengi's out for revenge. And I think this is the first time we're beginning to see the Ferengi turn slightly more into what they became in later Trek. Okay, they're still not comedy relief, and they aren't considered funny. They are still treated a bit stupid, but they are still meant to be threatening, for all that they do have that greed element really coming through in it. Although I did feel Data should have called at least some people dicks when, you know, they say, "Ooh, this is the android. How much for him?" And this little Data is, and then Riker goes, "Oh, used property. You wouldn't want him." Data might as well turn and go, "Hey, fuck you. I'm a living being. That's what you should be saying about me." That browned me off slightly, but overall, yeah, it's quite enjoyable. The pacing's still awfully off. I think season 1 pacing's just a bit weird. Also, everyone seems to end every sort of ad break, or the bits which seem to be going to ad breaks, staring meaningfully into the camera while a sort of worrying, stinging music starts. Like I say, I think this is more rough cuts before telly got better. And, I think these still do pervade, but overall the story's quite good. Picard gets a lot to do. He gets to act as little chops out, and we do have some quite nice spaceship bits, although sadly they do sap all the tension out of him doing the Picard manoeuvre, because Riker says, can you catch him? And Data goes, as if there's any doubt, yeah, I can. But I did, like I say, I did quite like overall the sort of way it's presented. So yeah, I mean, it's maybe not a classic episode, it's maybe not as good as I remember it. I do remember it being better, and I think it does sag quite a bit in the middle, but there's a lot of stuff to like. Say, when they go on to the Stargazer, and you've got him wandering around the bridge, and some of Picard's flashbacks and that sort of thing. As I say, Patrick Stewart's always good mileage, and I did actually like Riker doing his first officer to first officer thing with the Ferengi first officer. I thought that was quite a nice touch to the whole thing. I thought that really kind of just put a bit more, gave the Ferengi a bit more character than just villains of the week, and gave Riker, frankly, something to do. So yeah, overall, good stuff for a season 1 episode. Probably wouldn't stand up in one of the better seasons though. So I will be back shortly to talk about whatever the next. Hide and Q. Yes, I'll be back shortly to talk about Hide and Q. Until then, bye for now.
Bye.
Well, I thought it seemed quite good compared to a lot of the season 7 stuff we've had to put up with.
Yes, I was going to say, good for season 1, better than most of season 7.
Yes, sadly, yeah.
Because at least season 1 has the excuse it's new.
Yes, quite, yes.
Worf's different head.
Yes.
I'd never quite thought about it in those terms, but yes, he has a different head.
And skin tone as well is a lot darker in season 1, isn't it? Or perhaps that's just, it looks darker when he's wearing red. I don't know.
It could be. Or it could be that his different head is a different skin tone, and therefore, I don't know. But yes, it is a different head.
And Geordie not being in engineering seems odd as well. And the fact that they never have a regular chief engineer in season 1 always seems very, very strange.
And Riker's chin is unsettling.
And the Stargazer's a cool design, and it's good to see some more ships to build the universe up a bit.
Did you find the pacing weird?
It is a bit slow. There are times when I think they could have cut 10 minutes out of it, and it would have been a lot better. Particularly Picard firing at the ball thing at the end seemed to take forever. Very... And our daughter sat next to him and said, "Go on, just shoot it." He had a point, really.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Andrew and Tracy. I wonder what Tracy's going to make of season 1.
Hello, this is feedback for The Battle.
There was so much that was dated about this episode. It absolutely threw me because I wasn't expecting it to be kind of so old.
Let's not dwell on like how it looks and that, because it's a season 1 episode, because we might watch it. It's season 1, it's in the 80s, isn't it? But I feel we need to a little bit say something about, very dated. Picard sounds very British,
very British. A lot of short skirts, a throwback to the original series.
They should have kept that bit.
Lots of the crew.
Troy looks terrible.
Well, yeah, she actually looked like an alien, didn't she?
She does. She looks very alien, yeah.
Sort of,
and she speaks strange as well.
Yeah, she almost had some kind of weird accent. Crusher was a bit 80s Buffonty.
Yeah.
Very young looking.
Generally all different. Yeah. Let's not dwell on it too much, yeah.
It threw me that most of the crew was in red shirts.
They're all different positions,
apart from Tasha Yar and Data, they were still the yellows, but Worf in red.
Well, Tasha Yar's not in it later, is she?
Well, I know, but I still remember her as being yellow. But Worf is in red and Data.
Geordie's in red and he's on the helm.
Very weird, and no beardy Riker.
No. We like the Ferengi transporter beams, weren't they? We like the curly thing going around them. It was like an 80s transporter. And they transported them directly onto the bridge.
That's true.
Oh, it's like our terrible enemies like the Ferengi were going to be in season 1, and they take them straight to the bridge.
Why would you? You'd take them to security, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Or a transporter room.
Yeah. So it kind of threw me because later on I know the Ferengi from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And they're all short, aren't they? You don't get very many tall Ferengis, but
these
were like really tall.
Well, they were just the enemy then.
Yeah, obviously an early incarnation of
Yeah.
what was to be, but it just didn't look right.
When they found the doctored log that we know is doctored now, what about all the crew? Surely the crew were on there and they would back up Picard, wouldn't they? They'd say, well, no, actually, that didn't happen. And none of them had reported it in the first place.
No, they're dead, aren't they?
No, they all went on like escape pods, whatever you call them.
Hold on, there was no way that they all survived. They were sitting there with fire around them, fire coming out of the
every
bloody
time he was doing
console. There's no way that they survived.
They were sitting at the helm with the helm on fire.
Yeah. And Picard was like,
that's real devotion to duty, isn't it? I just stay here and burn.
Yeah, there's no way they survived.
When Picard says about, take the tractor beam off because we're wasting energy and the inertia will just carry the Stargazer. Yeah, if like they don't make any movements to their course at all and don't speed up, don't slow down, it will do.
Well, exactly. But at that point, why didn't Riker just go, no, I don't think so. I ain't trusting you. And also, we did chuckle a little bit when they first went onto the Stargazer and it had all that dirt all over it. And it looked like leaves that Picard was brushing
Autumn had happened in there.
How? Where did all that come from? There is
know.
no way there would be all that dirt.
When Riker says to Data, I need you to come up with a plan so we can beat the Picard manoeuvre. There's a couple of things here. First of all, they know what the Picard manoeuvre is. You go into warp, you warp straight towards the enemy craft, and you come out of warp and attack them. So, the first thing is, they don't have to decide which one of the two is going to be the ship. Because if they see a warp effect, they know the ship's warped and it's in front of them.
Yeah.
The idea was, no one had ever done it, so the Ferengi was like, whoa, there's two ships.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, the second point is, Data says, even in open space there's some gas, so we look for the compression of the gas.
Yeah.
That's rubbish. Yeah, okay, there might be like one particle in several billion in open space, but there's no compression of the very few particles there. It's just rubbish, isn't it?
Alright, Mr. Science, I'll take your word for that.
It just looks so 80s, this episode. I can't believe the style change that there is now.
But it was going to be, wasn't it? It
Yes.
was always going to be dated. Oh, it's going
I think that says everything about this episode, doesn't it? I reckon we should leave it there, shall we?
Sorry, I couldn't suppress that. I couldn't suppress that yawn.
Okay, well that'll do then.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'm sorry.
Perhaps it's just as well that we're rationing season 1 over a long period of time. We don't want to send you to sleep, blimey. Captain Science strikes again.
Yes.
Okay, well, yeah. As Tracy says, we'll take your word for it, sir.
I did think that the debris did look like leaves, though. It's like, where did they come from? And I'm glad you like the Ferengi transporter beams too.
I think we call this the curly-whirly transporter.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, now I quite fancy a curly-whirly.
So do I.
No, I had one of those, and you don't see them anymore, do you? Other than selection boxes at Christmas.
Yes. But they sell them at the moment. We could buy one even though it's not Christmas just to have the curly-whirly.
Then we'd be buying like 6 selection boxes just to get 6 curly-whirlies. That's a bit of a false economy, isn't it? Yeah, but then again, curly-whirlies...
Put the other chocolates in Leah's stocking. She won't know we weighed these selection boxes.
Ooh, mean.
No, it's nice. It's giving her extra chocolates that just don't happen to be curly-whirlies. Although I also really like Chomp, and you usually get those as well. And only in selection boxes.
Yes, it's true as well.
So she can have the stuff that's not curly-whirly or Chomp.
Oh, well, before we get too Christmassy, let's move on
yes.
to our next episode. Oh, yes, Hide and Q.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Can any of you stay alive?
The crew's challenged once again by the dreaded Q.
We have offered you a gift beyond all other gifts.
Tempting Commander Riker with extraordinary power.
Are you strong enough to refuse to use that power?
In a game
Worf!
that becomes a deadly confrontation. On Star Trek The Next Generation.
So then, Hide and Q, which is a crap title that bears no relevance to the actual episode, but never mind, we're used to that.
It doesn't bear any resemblance to anything. It's called Hide and Seek.
Oh, it's bizarre. It starts with Picard explaining that they've dropped Troy off somewhere to shop for chocolate or something, because Marina Sirtis was unavailable, so she's written out the story. Meanwhile, the Enterprise is rushing to the aid of a bunch of injured colonists. And you pointed out we've got Crusher walking down a corridor that I don't think we see very often, and it looks horribly, horribly 80s.
Oh, really badly 80s walls, really awful. And you have an original series thing.
Yes, you don't get that, do you, after a while? The Q's force field returns from Encounter at Farpoint, which is exactly the same footage reused.
Yeah.
He appears as a three-headed snake for some reason. We later find out he's an Aldebaran serpent.
But it's just a ball with
three snake heads. It's rubbish.
It reminds me of a rather bizarre pepper grinder I got given one year.
Right.
It was sort of supposed to look vaguely face-like with odd bits on. It was a range, I think, done by John Lewis at one point.
Okay.
So it's the pepper grinder of doom, really, as far as I'm concerned.
Then he takes his John Delancey form, wearing our first look at a Admiral's uniform for Next Generation, which is rubbish.
It's got that horrible stuff, the gold stuff.
Thick gold braid.
Yeah, my nan had that on things.
Yeah.
Like on clothes she made herself, and it's like one of the ways you could tell that it was something she made, is it had that shit on it.
It's basically the dress uniform, but with this big, thick gold stripe on it, and they'll change that by the literally in the next episode we get to see another Admiral. He doesn't have the rubbishy gold braid.
It's just terrible stuff. It looks like something that belongs on Christmas decorations.
Yeah. I suppose you could argue it's a fairly tense teaser if you think that Q is a frightening force, but there we are.
I suppose if the only thing you've seen up until this point is Farpoint, then I suppose actually he was at that point.
Yep. Q gives Worf some jip, which will become a running theme in later appearances.
Yeah, but he tells him off for having a big head. And in the last episode we talked about Worf's wrong big head.
Yeah, they are.
Q's not wrong.
Yeah. Picard gives a recap of events in Encounter at Farpoint. Quite why he needs to tell Q about it when he was there is another matter, but clearly it's for the audience's benefit.
Yeah, but it's just exposition.
Yeah. As a result of those events, the Q is now interested in the crew, especially Riker. Delancey's mourn a bit OTT throughout this episode and gets all excited by the idea of games! Oh, games! Oh, bloody hell. He's a lot better by the time you get to... now, what's the second season with all the Borg in it? Q who is that?
Oh, I don't know. They've all got shit episode titles.
Basically, until that point, Q's not very good. Riker, Data and Geordi, Yar and Worf are beamed to an obvious studio. It's a very cheap-looking set.
Well, the thing is, they haven't even taken the green screen out. They're just trying to pretend it's the sky.
Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? Meanwhile, Picard is left alone on the ship, unable to leave the bridge. Where are the rest of the crew? Because, let's face it, there are only, 5 of them beamed down to the planet, so... Where are all the rest of everybody?
Presumably prevented from going onto the bridge.
Well, no, because he tries and contact them and doesn't get any response. He even tries hailing turbo lift control, which must be...
what was that about?
The most boring assignment on the ship. Lift goes up, lift goes down.
No, he's
lift
calling...
goes up, lift goes down.
He's calling for a lift engineer, isn't he? It's the alarm call button.
Q appears on the planet in the dress of a French marshal. And apparently he's taken all this imagery from Picard's mind. He's going to use the games to assess humanity. Riker sits down normally.
I know.
This must be early stuff.
No, you see, I think it's because he's frightened of Q, so his bollocks have shrunk.
Q provides refreshments for the away team, but Worf pauses away in accordance, apparently, with the Klingon code of drink not with thine enemy.
That doesn't sound right. Klingons like booze and stuff. Wouldn't they get pissed with their enemy and
in actual
fight
fact,
tomorrow?
We see them getting drunk with their enemy in Redemption, don't we? In
do.
Part 2, so that's a load
Makes
of balls.
more sense. Get drunk with your enemy and then beat him up.
Yeah.
That's more logical.
He says this is why the Federation defeated the Klingons.
Which they didn't.
They didn't really, did they? No. Q offers them a great reward if they stay alive in his game.
See, all this thing about games started reminding me of Ian M. Banks and the Culture series.
Uh-huh.
Particularly while Q is there in that stupid uniform, in the stupid chair of stupid with the tent bollocks and all the rest of it. It just made me think that the Q Continuum are just bored.
Yep.
And so they're playing games, and for the games to mean anything, they have to be properly high stakes.
Yar complains, but Q disappears her into a penalty box with the threat of nothingness if someone else receives the penalty. Ba, ba, ba.
Living in a box.
Living in a penalty box. Oh dear, oh dear. Yar appears on the bridge and updates Picard, rather melodramatically, to say the least. Yes, we don't miss Yar very much, do we?
Lieutenant, Tasha, it's all right.
What in the hell am I doing? Crying?
Don't worry. There is a new ship standing order on the bridge. When one is in the penalty box, tears are permitted.
Captain. Oh, if you weren't a captain.
Consorting with lower-ranked females, Captain?
If you weren't a captain, that's all more than a bit dodgy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not the only bit of dodgy dialogue in this story.
No.
And the music is terrible throughout this episode. Awful. Q appears and says that Yar's penalty is over, though she's left on the bridge, so quite how that works I don't know.
I don't know.
He accuses Picard of being too bound by customs and traditions to be of any use to the Q. Instead, they're testing Riker to see whether he's worthy of their greatest gift. Picard gets Q to agree to keep out of humanity's way in future if Riker rejects the gift. Worf is scouting ahead to a bunch of Chaz and Dave lookalikes in old British military uniform.
Rabbit, 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 rabbit. You got a beautiful chin. You got beautiful skin. You got a beautiful face. You got taste.
Yeah, I know. Oh dear. Very cheap looking masks. It's like they've raided the dressing up box for something to use. And we never see these creatures again, unsurprisingly. It feels like the original series with cheap set and cheap monsters. Picard continues to jaw with Q with a bunch of Shakespeare quotes, which is just annoying, pretentious twaddle, I'm afraid, to pad the episode out.
No, see, I didn't see that. I saw that as Q being stupid, because he's trying to out-Shakespeare Patrick Stewart. He must have known he was going to fail.
Uh-huh.
And also, I did like the fact, a bit early on, Q stops Picard making log entries.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why couldn't he have kept that bit?
Data turns into Q, back on the planet. Yet another new look for him. Rather tiresome, the fact that he just keeps changing his appearance every 5 minutes. Turns out the Chaz and Daves don't have standard muskets as they fire some sort of energy shot. Geordi gets to do a roll. Oh, how we've missed those. Riker shoots a couple with his suppository phaser. Q challenges him to rescue his crewmates by transporting them to the ship with the power of the Q. The QNet disappears and things return to normal on the ship. Picard hails engineering, and Chief Engineer Nobody, because we never find out his name, says that nothing out of the ordinary has happened, so presumably everybody else has been paused or something. Who's at the... Well, Yar briefly in this one. The away team minus Riker reappears on the bridge. Meanwhile, Riker is laughing like a loon on the planet's surface. Clearly he hasn't been given the full omnipotent Q powers, as he has to ask his host what the plan is. Q offers to give him the full membership package, in order that the Continuum may understand humans better.
Does he get a free carriage clock and a commemorative pen?
Possibly. There's a load of guff about them being scared that humans will become all-powerful gods like them someday, and here we get the Roddenberry optimistic human bilge in full operation. Riker refuses to become a full Q because he says he doesn't like them. Q departs. The previous away team plus Picard and Wesley appear for some reason. Not again, Geordi complains, and so do we. This time they're not armed, and the Chaz and Daves prawn Worf and Wesley, the latter being a very popular scene with some fans, getting a bayonet right through the back.
It's nice, there's blood and everything. I went, where's the blood? As they were shooting it from high up, and then they moved down and there was blood, and I was happy.
Using the power of Q, Riker nets their opponents, transports the crew unharmed to the ship. Picard is not a happy bunny, though. They have a discussion about his new powers and the temptation to use them in the ready room, and Riker promises not to do so. Then he beams down with a rescue away team, which sensibly includes Crusher and another couple of medical bods. But it's a very bad, cheap-looking set again.
Oh, it's terrible. It's obviously really small, and there's lots of... And Geordi, the way he ponces about.
Yeah, he minces across the set, doesn't he?
He does. It reminds me of Paul Darrow as Avon.
They find a group of survivors, including one played by one Elaine Nally, which is not a name you'll recognise. when I IMDb'd her, it turns out she appeared in Muppets from Space.
Okay.
She played Mashed Potato Lady. Now there's a part to be envious of. Geordie locates a child trapped under the rubble, but she's pronounced dead Jim by Crusher. Data suggests he uses the Q powers to bring her back, but Riker refuses out of loyalty to his captain. Returning to the bridge, he expresses his frustration to Picard, demands a meeting with the senior crew and strops off. The gathering happens.
Oh, but not in the ready room.
No,
he stands on the bridge for no reason. Wouldn't the gathering naturally happen round the ouchie table of ouchie?
In the observation room, you mean, maybe? Includes Wesley, who's being cheesy again.
Silence the child or send him away.
He shouldn't fucking be there.
I think every time we cover a first season episode, we're going to be using that clip, you know?
I think so.
Riker explains he's the same as he always was.
No, he isn't.
Yes.
He stands differently. He's an arrogant cunt, and he has no beard. Grow the beard back.
Picard points out that he's now using the captain's first name. It's all rather laboured and obvious, to say the least. And whereas I really like Jonathan Frakes' performance in the battle, not so much in this one, I'm afraid. It's all too on the nose. Q turns up dressed as a monk for reasons.
Well, the better title for this episode surely would have been A Monk Time.
Ooh, ouch. Picard actually asks why Q feels the need to be dressing up all the bloody time, echoing the audience's thoughts.
But what about Flim Flam? Where does
he describes him as being a flim flam man.
What do you see, Riker? He's nothing but a flim-flam man. He's been that ever since we met him at Farpoint. Flim-flam.
I am the Flim Flam man. I come from Mandalay. Sorry.
Worf echoes our sentiments at this point. It's hardly a French phrase. Apparently it's Norse in origin.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Q gets Riker to use his powers to reward his friends according to their dreams. Crusher asks Wesley to leave, possibly worried about the content of his dreams.
I like that.
Make me well hung. No, Riker rewards him by making him apparently look 10 years older, but he's radically different to Will Wheaton all of a sudden. It's all very bizarre.
Do you think that's why Geordie fancies him?
Possibly, because Geordie says, not bad. It's like, hang on. Inappropriate. Data refuses to be made human, feeling it would have been an illusion of humanity. Next, Riker gives Geordie his sight, which prompts him to score on Yar instead of Wes. Make your mind up, man. Geordie doesn't like the price, though, and having to thank Q, so asks to be returned to the way he was, with spooky Christmas carol music. Music in this story is terrible. Worf, as a Prezi, gets a Klingon woman. So that's not at all dodgy gender politics, is it? I mean, you might argue... Oh, yeah, wax her one, yeah. Oh, my. Nice stunt work, but... And
then, Geordie criticises Worf's idea of sex.
Yeah.
Geordie, the holodeck.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had that yet, have we?
But no. Oh. And
anyway,
then Worf says, that has no place in my life now. And I'm thinking, really?
That'll only last a couple of seasons. Or even a season, come to think of it. Anyway, Wesley also rejects his gift on the basis he's not ready for it. To look really weird.
Yeah.
Riker says he feels like an idiot.
Well, he is an idiot. You're a fucking tossbot. Fuck the fuck off.
And that's pretty much what Picard tells him.
Yeah.
Then he orders Q to make good on his deal to bog off if Riker rejected the Q powers, which, to be honest, he hasn't. Everybody else has rejected the powers, not Riker. Q is in trouble with the Continuum thanks to his failure to tempt Riker and disappears in a scream of pain. Good.
But it's like he goes, ah! with his back arched for a very long time until a really, really naff effect appears and it's kind of slightly twinkly.
There's some guff about space and time being simpler than the human equation before the episode mercifully comes to an end.
But that cheesy wank line, that could have been Man-at-Arms.
Hey, Orko.
In this episode, Riker tried to give his friends their dreams without enabling them to realise them for themselves. He should have known better. Humanity learns through struggle. Remember, kids.
Remember,
try,
Orko?
Try again.
This is an episode of He-Man. Suddenly it all makes sense.
Cue Skeletor.
Oh, Picard! You have failed me again!
QMan!
Yes, we have the power to waste an entire hour. Ooh. All in all, it's rubbish. This is your typical first season crud. Q is way too OTT. He's terrible in this. The dialogue's clunky. There's too much padding. The set and the animal masks are cheap and nasty. I mean, it's not the worst of season 1, rather scarily, but it is pretty poop. Oh. We had a tweet from Shane saying he was pitying us having to watch this, having watched it himself today. And yeah. What did everybody else think, eh? Let's find out.
And the Mark writes, Hide and Q, or LeVar Burton has eyes, what the fuck? Or cartoon pony bad guy. So, Discord from My Little Pony shows up, played by John Delancey. Sorry, I mean version 1 of the only role John Delancey plays now, aka Q, returns while the Enterprise is on a mission of mercy and interrupts with a new series of games and snatches most of the bridge crew, less Picard, from the ship and puts them on the surface of a planet where an approaching platoon of deadly non-human soldiers who look like Napoleonic Alf. They do.
Alf, oh my life.
But they do. He says, with old-timey rifles close in on them. The show's early dialogue is lively thanks to Q's non-stop condescension and his amusing verbal barbs.
Oh, amusing? Really?
Hyde and Q benefits from being a follow-up to Encounter at Farpoint because this time Q is a recognisable nemesis who immediately comes across as an intellectual opponent rather than a physical threat.
Well, it's good to have continuity, certainly, I'll grant you that, and the fact that they showed a certain amount of confidence bringing him back so soon, but to be honest, the results aren't inspiring.
No. And the Mark continues, there's a method to his madness, as evidenced in the scene where he confesses to Riker that the reason the Q want Riker to join them is so they can learn about humanity's rare hunger to learn and grow. The story's second half centres on Riker's new powers and his promise to Picard not to use them, not even to save a young girl who dies in the explosion. Now he could save her, and the question of Picard's lack of morals should come up with that. This episode says that when you have the power to do something great, you shouldn't use it. That's one horrible and disgusting message.
No, the whole thing was that Picard had told Riker not to use the powers in order that he wouldn't lose the wager with Q, basically. That's the whole thing about it. Because if Riker accepts the powers, then Picard has lost his bet with Q when he said that he wouldn't give in. So, yeah, that's the reasoning behind it.
In the actual episode, he says it's about a temptation to use it all too often and it will change him.
Mm-hmm. He's basically saying Riker is human and therefore better than you.
Picard has been dogmatic to his beliefs to a fault. Riker's new gifts, despite his every effort to remain a humble human, insidiously turn him towards an arrogance he doesn't even recognise. Have you noticed how you and I are on a first-name basis? Picard asks him. I know the use of first name was a device to show that power corrupts, but it doesn't ring true, as I see Riker as having more respect for Picard than that. I've always found it annoying that type of show that magically fulfil the lifelong wish of some characters, only to find out 5 seconds later that it's actually a bad thing and you should have left them unchanged. Because, face it, there'll always be some characters that really benefit from that kind of magic. All of them rejected it. Okay, I laughed my arse off when I heard that adult guy speaking with teen Wesley's voice, and I could see why he would reject that. I liked the philosophical aspect of the episode, even if it didn't reach the potential it had in mind. Kind of like the original series where no man has gone before. The same oversimplified theme of absolute power corrupts absolutely, if true or not, does okay for this era. I will say, in fact, that LeVar Burton has fantastic expressive eyes, which nailed his scenes beautifully and perfectly. However, to get to see Super Kid Wesley impaled screaming on a bayonet, well, what's not to love about that?
Yeah. Oh, well, there you are. There's the Mark looking on the bright side, but I'm afraid, can't say I enjoyed it as much as that.
No.
Dear. Okay, let's find out what Doreen made of this one. Hiding Q. The weird crystal ball with snake heads that Q appeared as to begin with just made me think of those salt and pepper grinders.
Yes, it's not just me!
Yeah, they're a thing. Apparently they're supposed to be easier to operate.
Are they?
I don't know.
Oh, mine ended up in the bin. I couldn't fucking work it.
There you go. Q outacts all the other crew. I tend to like Q episodes. Worf appears weird in these episodes. Possibly more Klingon. Yes, he's... Oh no, Q, do not give Riker great power. Have you ever wondered why he's still first officer after 7 seasons? I like the concept of how the crew responded to getting their greatest wishes, but the acting let the concept down. Note to self, never trust Riker's word. The jeopardy in this episode seems highly staged and unbelievable.
Yep.
Yeah. Why did the writers make Beverly look like she's a rubbish doctor, possessing no professional detachment? She stands cradling a dead girl for way too long, whilst though she could still help watch on. That's a good point. I'm choosing to say nothing about the Q the monk and musical Q, pun intended. Argyle Smurf, I miss hearing your voice already. Never mind, maybe I'll just go back to listen to 721 with its double bill of the Argyle Smurf. Thank you, Doreen. Oh, we did get a tweet message from Argyle Smurf, didn't we? Yes. Very wisely not enduring the suffering.
No, he hadn't watched it for over a decade and wasn't about to.
So, well, you know, we can only claim he's very sensible in that. But thank you for that, Doreen.
Thank you.
Cool. And that takes us on to MP3. And let's hear what Drew and Tracy made of this.
So we've just watched the episode Next Generation Hiding Q.
Yep.
So what did you make of that then? You were a bit nonplussed about that.
Yeah.
I always remember you really being quite a big fan of Q. You had like the Q box set, didn't you? But
I don't know why.
You were just like, ugh, at this episode.
I just thought he's an awful character, and it's just rubbish, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's rubbish, but it's just very early series, and you know, it's just...
I don't remember it being that bad, really.
Well, I've never seen it, so for me it was the first time. I like the Dynasty music a go-go at the end of the opening sequence when Q appears. That was quite dun dun dun.
Yeah, it's all dramatic stuff.
It was dramatic. I liked it though.
I don't understand why there was this big thing about Picard who saying to Riker, you mustn't use your powers and you must promise.
No, I didn't quite.
Why?
I didn't understand that.
What was that about? Why didn't they just go, oh great, we've got this superpower now. Let's just use it for like the benefit of humanity.
But maybe if you kind of succumb to the power of, because Q was effectively saying you're going to have this power, and if you accept it, I'm going to make you a god, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So by Riker accepting it, it kind of makes him something in the Q continuum, if that's what you like, and then he won't be Will Riker anymore. So,
but you still have all that power, though,
but Will hasn't got the power to save people, so you kind of have to choose, don't you?
But it had to be
a child, didn't it? To be fair, that was mean.
I didn't understand it, and the same as like when we was watching him give out all the gifts, and like to Geordie, giving him the eyes.
Oh, that was wrong.
It's just like, what? And what did you say? If he's in like a wheelchair,
I said
paralysed from the neck down, and he said, "Oh, I can make you walk around." You go, "No, I'll stick with what I've got."
No, what I said was, it's a bit. I find it very strange that Geordie turns down the gift of sight, because if you were blind, proper blind, and someone said to you, you know, I'm going to give you the power of sight, especially after he's seen the planet and he's seen his fellow companions,
Tasha, yeah.
And then he's like, no, it's alright, I'm just going to put it back on and I'm going to go back to how I was because I don't like you over there, I'm not going to thank you. It just felt a bit too quick. If it was somebody in a wheelchair, would they have literally gone up and said, I'm going to give you the power of your legs, and you're going to then decide not to walk ever again? It was a bit strange. I didn't like it. I think Riker definitely comes into his own the later on you get into the seasons with Star Trek. He looks a bit newbie.
Yeah.
He's still doing his Riker pose though. I like the hand on the hip and the leg on the
rocks, wasn't it?
But he definitely looks better when he gets his beardy on.
Yeah. So the end, am I missing it, or did they sort of say, oh, we're back to like where we was if none of this had ever happened?
Yeah, because that's the thing. Q takes them to a point, and then when they kind of get rid of Q, they're back to where they started, aren't they?
So like that before they go to the planet and that little girl's dead. So wouldn't you thought they'd be like, God, quick, let's get to the planet quick.
They are going to. They sort of said, you know, we've still got a rescue mission.
But they were smiley and all that lot.
Yeah, because they know they're going to get there on time.
They were joking about it.
Yeah, but Q took them off on a tangent.
Oh,
that's why
Q.
They didn't get there.
There's like that, wasn't they?
They didn't get there. But they're going to get there on time now. That's my interpretation. That's my hope anyway. Tasha Yar and Picard flirting. That's just all kinds of
what
wrong.
Did she say?
What's that?
Something about...
If you weren't the captain... Yeah, like, what are you going to do,
Finish
love?
the line. He was
what
like...
What are you going to do?
Yes, finish that
line.
line.
No, he weren't. He was like, whatever, child. I did let out a little bit of a scream when, like, Will we turn Wesley and Worf got stabbed on the planet. I was like, what's that?
As a scream of joy with Will Wheaton.
No, well, yeah, but when Worf got knifed, I was like, my God. You really struggled with this episode. I could see your face at times where you were a bit rolling your eyeballs, to be fair.
Yeah.
For me, as a first-time watcher, didn't mind it. I'm not expecting much from kind of early season 1.
Yes.
Next Generation.
Let's be serious about it for a minute. We know it was finding its feet and it wasn't that good and it was still really had one foot stuck in the original series.
Yeah.
It's not taking all that into effect. It's not terrible, but it's pretty much compared to what it ended up to be like, and especially if you look at Deep Space Nine or whatever, it's unwatchable really.
It's not unwatchable, but it is strange. Like you notice like Worf's makeup's not quite there yet because his face is too long and his head's too, his forehead's too high, and they just all look a bit wrong at the minute.
Yeah, it took some time to get into it, but
develop.
I don't know. I really find it difficult to watch this stuff now.
Well, for me as a newbie to it, I'm open-minded. I quite liked it, so yeah, it was fine. Anyway, thank you very much, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
It's terrible. It's not terrible, but unwatchable.
Yeah.
And Beardy Riker is definitely better. He might have his hands on his hips and the foot on the rocks, but his chin's wrong. He's got the chin of wrong. It's disturbing. It needs to be covered with a beard. I love Drew's sigh. He used to be a fan of Q and now doesn't know why.
Yeah, there's at least 50% of the Q stories that are pup.
Yeah. I mean, I think between the two of them, they did understand why it is Riker can't use his powers to save the girl. It's because succumbing to the powers would mean he wasn't Riker anymore. And that's what you see when he's saying Jean-Luc and not Captain. In terms of Geordi turning down the gift of sight, what he says is the price is too high.
Yeah, which actually is one of the few good moments, and I quite like that phrase. It's like, yeah, okay, I could accept this gift, but actually it means accepting the fact that he's, Riker has become something other than human, and he's not prepared to do that.
But also, although they don't know the Q as well as we do, because we've seen later episodes, they've been through Farpoint. You're not going to trust a gift from the Q, or at least I wouldn't. Already at that point, it's like, what are the consequences of this?
Yeah.
So, in that sense, I can understand him saying no, because of where the gift has come from. And Yar and Picard, they are all kinds of wrong.
Yeah, that was a really weird line of dialogue, wasn't it? My life. That and Geordie's lines as well. Oh, dear.
Yeah. Yeah, and screams of joy when Wesley is stabbed. Can relate.
Nice.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, let's find out what Puri made of this one.
Hello again, Parry here to talk about Hidden Q. This episode's really not as good as the battle. It's not awful, but again, I think what you see here, and indeed what would be interesting to go through all of Season 1 for, is to see the series finding its feet, finding out what works and what doesn't, such as Riker's chin. Yeah, there's some bits of this that really don't. What we do see is Q very different from how he was in Encounter at Farpoint. For all they reuse that big grid thing, presumably it costs a lot to make, so that's coming back anyway. We do get Q seems much more of a trickster, and he's changing outfits a bit. Well, he's changed outfits in Encounter at Farpoint, but he seems like he's being a lot more tricky, and he's having a lot more of a laugh. He's insulting people, and I think that's one of the things that we missed from Encounter at Farpoint. Beyond sort of general "I'm awesome" and superior insults, we didn't get these personal ones like his jab at Worf, his microbrain, that sort of thing. And similarly, we also don't really have a Q pun in the title. If you'll forgive Q pun as possibly a pun in the American pronunciation of coupon. Nah. So yeah, as I say, the episode, the problem with it is it kind of meanders. They're off to an emergency, and then Q intervenes, and they kind of fart about on a planet with iffy aliens in Napoleonic garb. And then Riker gets Q powers, but then gets annoyed because he sees a child die, and then they go back and everyone... Oh no, was that before everyone gets killed? They beam everyone to the planet and Wesley gets stabbed, as does Worf. Like I say, it just kind of... There's some good bits. Like I say, I quite liked Worf's reaction to Q, how he's constantly just in full-on glare mode. I think that worked well. Worf's never putting up for any of his shit. By contrast, yes, I can see kind of why they killed Tasha off. She is kind of a bit of a redundant character. It's a shame. I think they could have done something with her, but... she's meant to be the strong female who then, when she's stuck on her own, bursts into tears of frustration. I know it's kind of overwhelming, but I just thought there could have been better character beats than that. I didn't think she was particularly well characterised in this. The bit I did like, as I say, Q is actually quite watchable. He's definitely getting more like the Q we know and love later on. And I did like the bit where Riker starts basically granting wishes, particularly for the point when he's about to go to Data, and Data goes, oh no, and the whole thing about earning it himself, and similarly, Geordi getting his sight back, saying, no, I'm going back, and the whole idea that he's got all these godlike powers and his friends don't want them. I actually thought they could have done more. I think the problem was that kind of cropped up about halfway through the episode, and you could have actually done a fairly good episode of Riker being an example of power corrupting. Now, no, it's not. I was about to say is the next episode, Q, the one where Q is human, but it isn't, because he does seem to be taken away at the end of this episode, which I thought was weird, because he then just shows up again in Q Who, without anything really happening, as if he's been punished or anything. So I thought that was a bit odd, and I think maybe while Q Who's a good episode and I wouldn't want to miss it, I think maybe I can't even remember. Was it Deja Q, or Q Ball? I can't remember. But that episode where he's basically dropped with the Q continuum for misbehaving, that would have almost fitted in better after this one. But I could be wrong. So yeah, all that remains for me to say is, do keep up the good work. It's a good podcast, and I will join you again for the next couple of episodes. Until then, bye for now.
Bye. Yeah, I seem to remember Q Who does reference the fact that he was in trouble, but he basically bollocks something about he got away with it or something. I don't know. It's rubbish.
So anyway. The Q continuum punishing him and making him human would have been better.
Yeah, definitely a much better idea. Yeah.
I can understand what you're saying about, this is first season, we've got to bear in mind that they're trying out what works and what doesn't, and Riker's chin doesn't. Completely agree. And so that there's an extent to which you have to give it a bit of leeway in a way that we don't with season 7, because they should bloody know better by
exactly.
now. But yeah, the episode does meander. There is a lot of farting about on the planet. And yeah, Yar is a redundant character, and she should be the strong female as the head of security.
She's badly treated throughout, basically. It's very unfortunate, because she could have been a really good character, but they hadn't got the balls to do it, basically, unfortunately. So
no. And I agree as well that they could have done much more with this episode if Riker had got the powers a lot earlier. And it had been more of a story about the corruption of power.
Yes, that would have been an interesting thought, yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there we go. That's another 2 episodes got done, thankfully. And as I said, the battle wasn't bad, I thought, particularly for an early Trek.
No, I enjoyed the battle. Certainly more than most of Season 7.
So, thank you to everybody who's enjoyed those with us.
Thank you!
Next time we return to Season 7. Oh, is that a good thing or not?
I don't know. What's the episode?
So on Tuesday the 8th of December, we shall be covering Deep Space Nine's The Wire, which is...
that is properly awesome.
It's a Garak episode, so yeah, we're back into safe territory there. And Bloodlines, which is very much the sequel to The Battle.
Oh, okay.
Which features Damon Bulk, played by somebody else. And yes, it'll be interesting to see whether that improves on The Battle, considering how Season 7 has been generally. Not very likely, but we shall see. If you wanted to check out Chaos on the Bridge, it's on Netflix.
Yep.
Okay, we'll catch you next time. Take care, cheery bye.
Bye. The bOrgCast is brought to you by the lovely people at geekplanetonline.com.
Music at the beginning of this podcast was written and performed by Adam Buxton and is used with his kind permission. All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only and no copyright infringement is intended.
To contact us, you can use the forums at geekplanetonline.com.
Visit our Tumblr site at bOrgCast.tumblr.com, where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send email messages or MP3s to BORgCast@geekplanetonline.com.
Or you can contact us via Twitter on rev_org or bOrgCastAmmo. #bOrgCast.
Oh, you won't stop talking. Why don't you give it a rest? You got more rabbit than Sainsbury's. It's time you got it off your chest. Now you was just the kind of girl to break my heart in two. I knew right off when I first clapped my eyes on you. But how was I to know you'd been my ear holes too? With your incessant talking, you're becoming a pest. Rabbit, 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 rabbit.
Shut it down!